So the next series that I have really fond memories for is a series that maybe a lot of my Canadian friends will understand, especially if you're between the ages of maybe 25 to 35 years old. And this cartoon came on in the early afternoon, I think between 1 or 2 o'clock on ITV. ITV is a channel that originated out of Edmonton, Alberta, and basically living in the far east of Canada. When ITV used to show cartoons, it used to be in the afternoon, you know, in Newfoundland, just because of the different time zones. But ITV was really known for showing the Disney cartoon block, you know, late in the evening. You know, that's where they showed, you know, shows, you know, like the Adventures of the Gummy Bears and Rescue Rangers and Tailspin and Darkwing Duck and Gargoyles and Goof Troop and, you know, a few others. But they actually showed a lot of really excellent cartoons in Newfoundland in the early afternoon. And the one that I have the fondest memories for, but I don't know if they showed this this cartoon in America, because, you know, we didn't really have any American cartoon channels, you know, except for, you know, CBS, NBC, and ABC. And the cartoon is the 1980s Astro Boy. God, this series is so fucking good. Now, unfortunately, the set that I have here is different from the version that I watched as a kid. This set was released by Manga Entertainment in the mid 2000s, early to mid 2000s, and it's redubbed. It's a different dub than the version I remember as a kid, and but one of the best things about this series is that I think you can watch this both subtitled and in the English. But one of the best things about this set is that this set has 51 episodes, and I'm almost sure all of the 51 episodes were showed in the Canadian market as well. But in the Canadian version of Astro Boy that got showed on ITV, a lot of the episodes were dramatically cut. Maybe because they were a little violent, or maybe they just had to fit like 22 minutes, you know, that's all they could fit, you know, just for TV purposes. But it was really great to watch like the uncut full versions of a lot of these episodes, because I remember seeing a lot of scenes, you know, in this set that weren't on the episodes that I watched as a kid. But this series is insanely good. And, you know, this series, you know, much like the Jungle Book, you know, it teaches a lot of excellent life lessons. And, you know, this series is a little better because, yes, it kind of tells, you know, one huge story, but like a lot of the episodes are very self-contained. You don't need to watch earlier episodes to kind of understand what's going on. But it definitely helps, you know, if you do watch it from beginning to end. And much like in this series, you know, characters die in this series. And this anime is not afraid to show that. But I have such fond memories of the Canadian dub of this show. And but one of the biggest differences between the Canadian dub and the Manga Entertainment dub of this show is the Manga Entertainment version actually kept a lot of the names accurate. The Canadian version kind of changed some of the names of the characters. I guess the one example I can think of is that in the Canadian version, the doctor that looks after Astro Boy in the Canadian dubbed version is called Dr. Peabody, but in this version he's called Dr. Elephant. And from my knowledge, Dr. Elephant is actually the correct name. And I started noticing, episodes in this series ran a little longer than the stuff that was shown on syndicated television. Like one episode I remember watching as a kid was when Astro and his classmates were going on a field trip, and I guess they went to this old train yard, and they actually seen an actual old locomotive, and this takes place in the future where steam powered technology didn't really exist that much. And I remember in the Canadian version, ended at a part of the episode, where they could see safety, and because because the episode based on that, they had to get the safety because a flood was in the area, and a normal train couldn't get them, so they had to take the steam powered locomotive and actually ride that train to safety, despite the railway being in really rough shape, and them not knowing if they're going to make it. And in the Canadian version, once they seen safety, the episode just ended. But in this version, when they seen safety, they actually couldn't stop the train, and they actually showed what happened when they actually reached the checkpoint and things along those lines. But this episode's just really good. Atlas is such a badass in this show, regardless if it's the Canadian version or this version. I do prefer his voice in the Canadian version more, but it's still really good. Atlas and his Crystal Palace, or Crystal Spaceship, whatever you want to call it. But I think anybody who actually had the opportunity to enjoy this show when it was first released, I think one of the best episodes of this show, and I know it's an episode a lot of us remember because it was an episode that was so different and so much more brutal than every other episode of Astro Boy I ever seen. And I just briefly want to talk about this. It was the episode where they had this robot tournament, and what it was is that this bad guy, this enemy, had decided that he was going to make the most powerful robot ever. And in order for this robot to be the most powerful robot ever, is that he actually had to kill all the other robots in the world to become the most powerful robot. And this was a big, giant, dark blue robot with two horns, and he used to take his arms and spin them around so fast that he would turn into a tornado. So basically what he did is that he went around the world hunting like the most powerful robots ever. And basically the horns that this robot had were deadly. If you got caught in these horns, you were fried, you were dead. So he used to travel across the world and kill every one of these robots. And Astro was one of them. And he pretty much killed all of them, except for Astro. There's one of the robots he had to take on actually ran an orphanage, and this robot had no conscience, no shame, with regards to the orders that was given to him, and he just met these robots, fought them honorably, one-on-one, without no help whatsoever. It was a bad robot, but he was a robot, guided by honor. And one of the funny things is that in the Canadian version of that episode, some of the deaths were actually cut out, but in this episode, they're not. Like, you actually get to see robots fried and blown up. You get to see a robot, ripped in half, and it's probably one of the most memorable episodes of Astro Boy I remember. But one of the best things about this series is that even though it has 51 episodes, all 51 episodes are enjoyable. I am hard-pressed to find a bad episode in this 1980s series. And I just hope eventually, I would love to see the original dub, the original Canadian dub of the of the series get released, because it's the one that I have the fondest memories for. But this one is still good as well. You know, it may have different voice actors, you know, for the dubbed. But regardless if the series is dubbed or subtitled, which you can get both versions on this DVD set, it's still really enjoyable. And I highly recommend it. And I guarantee you, any of my Canadian friends who had ITV, and I know a lot of them did, you remember this show and you probably watched it just as much as I did. So it is incredibly enjoyable, guys, and you know, especially for anyone that grew up with the show, it's worth having in your collection again. So, next series, guys, is the big one. Series that will always be regarded as a timeless classic. A lot of people praise this anime for helping popularize anime in the West. A lot of people love it, some people hate it, but it's literally one of the most popular animes out there. You know, it has some of the most memorable characters, it has some of the best battle scenes of all time. And this came out right at the very beginning when anime started to become popular in the West, and I mean insanely popular. You know, you still had companies like US Manga Corps and a few other small companies, you know, like Streamline Pictures and a few others that would release, you know, anime sporadically, but, you know, it was more of a cult thing, you know, it wasn't very popular or like anything along those lines. But when this anime first debuted on YTV on Saturday morning, it either came on at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. I know it was early. And from the very first episode, I fell in love with it. And I had to get the entire series so I could watch it, you know, start to finish, because unfortunately when this anime came out, you know, as much as I tried to watch as many episodes as I could, unfortunately, because it came on so early Saturday morning, sometimes there would be episodes that, you know, I would miss. And that episode literally is the big one, guys. It's Dragon Ball Z. Holy fuck, where to begin? This is literally one of the biggest animes ever made, one of the most popular animes ever made. But it took North America in such a storm that I don't think anybody realized how popular this was ever going to be, despite it being insanely popular in Japan. But from the very first episode, a lot of people were really hooked on this series, and I was one of them. You know, I came across this completely by accident. I had no idea this series had even existed. I knew Dragon Ball had existed, because Dragon Ball was shown on YTV before, on Sunday morning. But I had no idea that a Dragon Ball Z even existed. So when I got up Saturday morning, and I turned on the television, you know, going through the channels, you know, to see what Saturday morning cartoons were on. And I turned on YTV, and basically I was greeted by the opening to Dragon Ball Z. And on the Ocean dub, the original dub, the first dub of the series that I know of, here you had this awesome theme song, Rock the Dragon. And in all honesty, I think it's probably one of the best cartoon opening songs, you know, you could ever ask for, regardless if it's an American cartoon or, you know, a Japanese cartoon. And, you know, and I watched it and I said, I'm recognizing some of these characters, and I just thought, these are the characters from Dragon Ball, but they're older. This is awesome. And I actually enjoyed the Dragon Ball series when it had its very short run, you know, on YTV. And, you know, the first episode obviously is when Raditz lands on Earth. And then, you know, you get to see all your favorite characters, you know, all grown up. And it kind of, like, shocked me a little bit, because, you know, at that time I'd never watched a series, you know, in which I ever, you know, seen a person, you know, go from a child, you know, to an adult. And it was kind of amazing to think to yourself, well, they're older, so I wonder what's new in their lives, or like, I wonder what they're doing now. You know, you were really interested in all the characters, because since they were all grown up, you wanted to see what they were doing, in their life. And just from the very first episode, it was just an enjoyable ride. The series gets made fun of for having a lot of like filler episodes, or episodes that don't really go anywhere. A lot of people often make the pun that it's drag on Ball Z, because it just keeps dragging on and on and on. Okay, get to the fight. And but it never really deterred me from watching it. But the worst thing is that I don't think the North American market really understood how much people love this series, because the Vegeta saga that they shown on YTV, and they showed it every weekend, Saturday morning, same time. And by the time the Vegeta saga ended, the last episode was when Vegeta, got back into the escape pod and flew back into space. And it was setting it up for another saga. And I was really excited, and I'm sure every Canadian kid or every American kid was excited. But I don't know if the Americans ran into this, but we ran into this all the time, because it happened to Sailor Moon. When they were basically setting up the next saga, and you'd wait until next week and to watch the next episode of Dragon Ball Z, they went right back to the beginning. They went right back to the first episode, and I was so heartbroken. I was completely heartbroken, because I thought they would have moved to the Namek saga and then to the Frieza saga, and they didn't, and it was so fucking heartbreaking. But I love the Ocean dub, I really do. And the Ocean dub is kind of referred to as the Canadian dub as well, because quite a few Canadian voice actors did the dub for it, and I think it was dubbed in Vancouver, I think. And but my inside knowledge on Dragon Ball Z, is very limited. But this box set that I have, this is not the Ocean dub. This is a brand new English dub of this series, and yes, and you can get English subtitles on this set as well. But I was captivated in this series right from the very beginning, and and it's just really enjoyable, and it's a timeless classic, and it's still relevant today. There are still people who still watch it for the first time and find it really enjoyable. And now I think there's a new Dragon Ball Z series going on right now. I still haven't had a chance to watch it, because unfortunately free time is a luxury in my life. But unfortunately, for us Canadians, we had to wait a long time, before they would jump into the Namek saga and then the Frieza saga. And I think the Ocean dub went as far as the Frieza saga, and then it stopped. And then I guess a new company took it over, and then it was a brand new dub, and then they continued on from there. But I remember, when they finally decided to do the Namek saga and move on to the Ginyu Force, and then the Frieza saga, I remember YTV did it again, or the Ocean dub did it again. They got to a certain point in the Frieza saga, and then they stopped, and then they went right back to the first episode of the series again. So it was incredibly fucking frustrating, because you got hooked on the series so much, and you loved the series so much, and you thought every week you were going to see a new episode, and then when you'd get so far, and then they just reset back to the first episode again, and that was absolutely crushing, absolutely heartbreaking. Now, unfortunately, the version that did come on syndicated television, it was very edited. It was nowhere near as violent as what the original Dragon Ball Z episodes were. Instead of saying they were going to kill characters, they were going to send them to another dimension. I remember there were a few dirty jokes that were edited. They didn't put halos on people's heads, when they died, and they changed the words hell to the home for infinite losers, and things along those lines. But yeah, but as a kid, you never really picked up on that stuff. You didn't. You just wanted to watch the show just because you knew you were going to see a good fight. And thankfully, the series kept that promise. A lot of people feel that the series, lost steam, but by the time it got to the Majin saga. Personally, out of all the seasons Dragon Ball Z has, the Android saga is my favorite saga in Dragon Ball Z. And if you're wondering, my favorite bad guy from Dragon Ball Z is Android 17, and my favorite hero is Gohan. But this is a timeless classic, and it deserves to be watched by a lot of people. And I think, if my memory serves me correctly, I think they did release the Ocean dub as a licensed DVD release, but I haven't gotten it yet. And but if you love anime, it wouldn't surprise you if you've already watched this, from beginning to end. It is an incredibly long anime series, at least over 200 episodes. I don't know to count. But, there are a few episodes where it drags in places, but there's some really good action. Right from the first fight scene, where it was Goku and Piccolo versus Raditz, some of the fight scenes were just incredibly well detailed and incredibly entertaining. And this is just a timeless classic, and it is going to be relevant to people who love anime for a very long time. And if it wasn't for this show, anime would have never been near as popular in the Western market as what it is right now. So we all have to owe a lot to this anime making its way to North America. And the final anime we have, guys, not going to set this up too much, but it is the actual original Dragon Ball. Now, this is a series I haven't watched all the way through yet. The funny thing is, when Dragon Ball was first released in the North American market, I watched it on YTV as well, but it used to come on Sunday mornings, I think, at around 10 a.m. And the worst thing about the original Dragon Ball series is that when it was first released to North American audiences, they only had released the first maybe 12, maybe 13 episodes, and that was it. No more. And that was really heartbreaking, because they started off the series, like the same way, same first episode, but when it was released on YTV, they ended the episode where Goku had, turned into the giant monkey, and he had destroyed Emperor Pilaf's castle, and that was the last episode. And it came out during a time, before the internet, so for a lot of us kids, we thought the series was over. We didn't realize that there was this whole much longer story to it. And then, when more information got out and we discovered that this series does run a lot longer, and I guess eventually, thank God, they actually released the full series. And the thing is that obviously, when this series was on Canadian television, it was really edited as well. From my understanding, I have finished off the first season of Dragon Ball. I haven't watched the rest of the seasons yet, but it's definitely much more humorous than than Dragon Ball Z. There's a lot of dirty jokes in it, and there's a lot of hilarity in it as well. Much more than what Dragon Ball Z is, but it's actually nice to see a series, where you get to see a character's humble beginnings, because I'm sure for a lot of us, a lot of people probably ended up watching Dragon Ball Z first before, watching Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball GT. So it was actually nice when they actually released the sets like this, that they finally showed the full uncut series, as it was meant to be watched to begin with. But I do have fond memories for this, because outside of outside of Robotech, which I would probably admit Robotech was probably the first anime that I've ever watched in my entire life, even though I did not realize it was anime at the time. And I still need to own the Robotech box set, especially the first season, because I have such fond memories of that series as well. And I hate to admit it, but the English voice actress that does the voice of Lisa Hayes, I have a crush on her voice. I think that's one of the most beautiful female voices I've ever had the pleasure of listening to in any anime I've ever watched. But going back to Dragon Ball, it's just unfortunate, especially when it was first released, that we only ever got the first like 12 to 13 episodes of it, and then it suddenly stopped, and then it would never air again. But Dragon Ball, I would say, was probably maybe the second, maybe third anime I've ever watched as a kid. And for what I watched, it was incredibly funny and incredibly enjoyable. And it's something I highly recommend people will watch, because it's like I said about Dragon Ball Z. The entire Dragon Ball series is an incredibly timeless series, even though Dragon Ball GT is hated by a lot of Dragon Ball fans, and probably rightly so. I haven't finished watching the series yet myself. I've only caught the first one or two episodes of Dragon Ball GT, but if it wasn't for the success of Dragon Ball Z, we probably would have never ever had this released in its entirety, for a North American market. So we'll always be thankful for that. But Dragon Ball, incredibly humorous. Maybe not as action-packed as Dragon Ball Z, but still an enjoyable series regardless. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed some of the anime that I've watched, and I hope you enjoyed watching episode 2 of my favorite anime of all time, syndicated television version. So as always, guys, take care, and I wish you nothing but the best. Later.